"No one will listen to a child here," whispered a voice from the back of the glittering ballroom, just as the chandeliers threw prisms of light across polished marble floors, and the soft scent of jasmine mingled with the faint aroma of rich leather and gold leaf from the furniture. Emily, 10 years old, blonde hair neatly tied with a faded ribbon, clutched her worn sheet music, a quiet figure in the corner, trying to shrink into the shadows as a crowd of elegantly dressed guests, glasses sparkling with champagne and gowns flowing like liquid silk, murmured and snickered at her presence, the soft tapping of heels echoing against the vast room, a hushed symphony of wealth and privilege. She could feel their eyes on her, judgment sharp as crystal, but she held her breath, remembering the words her mother had told her just this morning. "Talent speaks when words cannot, my little star." And she traced the edges of the paper, feeling the embossed notes, the slight ridges beneath her, fingertips grounding her in the familiar comfort of the music, while beyond her, the elite continued their conversations, discussing stock prices, upcoming galas, and acquisitions, oblivious to the quiet storm gathering at the edge of the room. Emily's heart beat in time with the soft hum of the air conditioning, a rhythm she had learned to match in her practice sessions at home. And she watched the grand piano at the center of the ballroom, its ebony finish gleaming under the chandelier lights. A silent challenge calling to her, daring her to step forward. Her mother's eyes met hers briefly across the room, a subtle nod, an unspoken permission, and Emily felt the tension within her coalesce into determination, a spark that lit behind her blue eyes, a tiny fire in the face of their doubt. She drew in a slow, deliberate breath, noticing the polished mahogany tables and the glinting silver cutlery, the faint reflection of the chandeliers in the glasses, and she imagined herself playing. Through the room, the notes carrying stories of every quiet afternoon spent learning alone, every whispered encouragement, every mistake corrected in solitude, each one a stepping stone to this single moment. The murmurs of the crowd began to shift as some noticed her glancing toward the piano, whispers of, "Is she really going to play?" rippling through the air, attention growing. Palpable, as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for what a small girl could possibly do in the face of such grandeur. And Emily, aware of the weight of eyes and expectation, stepped forward quietly, her small shoes making no sound against the marble, the floor reflecting the glittering chandeliers above, her fingers poised above the keys, a shiver of anticipation running through her, every muscle taut, every heartbeat measured, a moment suspended in time just before the first note rings out, promising a revelation that would demand attention, a quiet revolution of talent in the midst of opulence, and the guests leaned in without realizing it, drawn into the silence of her focus, as the ballroom held its collective breath, waiting for the story about to unfold. Emily placed her small hands on the polished black and white keys, feeling the cool smoothness beneath her fingertips, and for a moment the ballroom seemed to pause, the soft clinking of glasses and the distant murmur of conversation fading into a hush that wrapped around her like a cocoon. The notes she had practiced tirelessly at home, in the quiet of her bedroom with the sun streaming through a narrow window, now flowed freely. Delicate at first, a gentle rising and falling of melody that danced between the chandeliers and across the marble floors, drawing the attention of everyone in the room without a word. Her mother watching from the edge of the crowd with eyes wide and proud, silently encouraging her to continue, as if each note carried a message of resilience and hope, the air thick with anticipation and the faint scent of polished wood and fresh flowers, mingling with the subtle fragrance of expensive perfume worn by the guests, a contrast that highlighted the extraordinary presence of the young girl among the opulence. The music swelled, richer now, more confident, each chord perfectly articulated, weaving through the air with a clarity that made the guests lean in involuntarily, their previous laughter replaced by astonishment, whispers fading into stunned silence as they realized that this was no ordinary child, that the small figure before them possessed a depth of talent that defied their expectations, that her quiet determination and countless hours of practice had culminated in a moment that could not be ignored, and even the most self-assured and powerful individuals found themselves captivated, their expressions softening as the realization of her brilliance sank in. the gentle rise and fall of the piano filling the grand hall with a resonance that seemed almost sacred, a bridge between worlds, between privilege and humility, between expectation and revelation, as Emily's fingers flew across the keys, moving with both precision and grace, each note carrying a story of perseverance. Each pause a breath that held the weight of countless silent victories, and the crowd, initially skeptical and judgmental, found themselves drawn into a narrative they had not anticipated, a narrative of quiet triumph and unexpected genius that hung in the air like a delicate tapestry, shimmering under the light of the chandeliers, connecting every individual in the room to the undeniable truth unfolding before them, that greatness could indeed emerge from the most unassuming of places, and that the heart of true talent was often hidden until the perfect moment revealed it in all its luminous glory, leaving the guests suspended in awe, captivated by the unfolding display, their thoughts momentarily transported from the glittering gowns and polished floors to the pure, unadulterated music resonating from a small, determined girl. As the final chords resonated through the grand ballroom, Emily felt a gentle warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief and quiet pride, and she lifted her hands from the piano keys slowly, as if releasing the last thread of a secret only she had known until this moment. The guests remained frozen in astonishment, their elegant faces pale with wonder, the previously skeptical whispers now replaced by an almost reverent silence, the soft clatter of champagne glasses and the faint rustle of silk gowns suspended as if time itself had paused to savor the unfolding revelation. And Emily, feeling the weight of the collective gaze, glanced toward her mother, who stood at the edge of the room, a small, proud smile tugging at the corners of her lips, eyes glistening under the chandelier light, silently acknowledging every hour of practice, every stolen moment spent perfecting her craft in the quiet of their modest apartment, away from the grandeur and judgment of the world. Above, each note Emily had played carried a story of perseverance, of resilience, and of the determination to transform doubt into beauty. And now that story hung visibly in the air, wrapping around every astonished attendee, some of whom had prided themselves on their discernment, only to realize that talent is not measured by wealth or status, but by dedication and heart. And even the billionaire, who had watched from the back with a subtle furrow in his brow, now leaned forward, curiosity and genuine admiration replacing his initial amusement, while others reached instinctively for their cameras and phones, yet hesitated, sensing that no lens could capture the true essence of the moment, the music itself having drawn them into a silent, shared experience, connecting strangers in a web of awe and appreciation. And as Emily slowly rose from the bench, the echo of the final note lingered in the polished marble and gold-accented walls, a gentle reminder that the smallest, quietest individuals can command the largest attention when their hidden brilliance is revealed, that every suppressed whisper of doubt is no match for persistent courage, and that tonight, in this opulent room filled with power and privilege, a 10-year-old girl had rewritten the expectations of all who watched, leaving a sense of wonder and a hint of promise that the story was only just beginning, that her journey would continue beyond this night, and that the world might now start to look a little differently at the quiet ones who wait patiently for the perfect moment to shine. As the applause began to ripple through the edges of the grand hall, Emily remained poised at the piano, her small hands resting lightly on the keys, feeling the vibrations from the final chords settle beneath her fingers, a tangible echo of the emotion she had poured into every note, while the crowd, previously rigid with skepticism, now leaned forward, eyes wide, some whispering to their neighbors, some simply holding their breath, collectively caught in the spell of a performance that had transcended age, status, and expectation. The chandeliers above reflected tiny prisms of light across the marble floors, each glimmer bouncing against the elegant gowns and sharply tailored suits of the attendees, creating a mosaic of awe and wonder that seemed to suspend the very air around them. And Emily, sensing the shift in energy, allowed herself a small, quiet smile, her heart swelling with the validation of her dedication, a quiet triumph that spoke louder than any word ever could. Her mother standing just behind her, hands folded, eyes glistening with pride and a hint of tears, having watched every meticulous hour of practice, every whispered correction and encouragement, now seeing it culminate in a moment that commanded respect and admiration without demand. Beyond the immediate circle of the performance, the billionaire on the far side of the room adjusted his posture, his usual stoicism giving way to a rare and genuine amazement, acknowledging silently the depth of Emily's talent, while nearby, a young reporter, notebook open and pencil poised, paused mid-sentence, capturing not just the performance, but the narrative of persistence, humility, and brilliance that Emily embodied. Knowing that this moment would resonate far beyond the walls of the ballroom, the soft murmur of conversation slowly returned, tinged now with admiration, as the guests reflected on the unexpected source of such extraordinary skill. The contrast between the opulence surrounding Emily and her unassuming presence heightening the impact of every note she had played, and as the final echo faded, leaving only the lingering warmth of music and wonder, Emily stepped back from the piano, hands clasped lightly in front of her, feeling the weight of the room's gaze, not as a burden, but as a recognition of her quiet perseverance, and the room, once filled with doubt and subtle ridicule, had transformed into a place of reverent acknowledgement, each person carrying with them the memory of a performance that had started with a small, unassuming figure and ended with an undeniable declaration of hidden brilliance, leaving a sense of anticipation that her journey had only just begun, that the impact of this night would unfold in ways unseen, planting seeds of inspiration for everyone who had witnessed the quiet triumph of a 10-year-old girl who dared to claim her moment in the spotlight. As the final applause faded into a soft murmur of awe and admiration, Emily stood beside the grand piano, her small frame illuminated by the glow of the chandeliers above, each crystal catching the light and scattering it across the marble floors, casting delicate patterns that danced over the faces of the astonished guests, many of whom had never witnessed such a blend of poise, talent, and quiet confidence from someone so young and unassuming. The scent of polished wood, faint jasmine, and the subtle richness of aged leather mingled in the air, anchoring the moment in a tangible reality that contrasted sharply with the fantastical impression Emily had left through her music, and she could feel the weight of the room's gaze, not as pressure but as acknowledgement, a collective breath held and now slowly released in recognition of her skill and determination, while her mother, standing just a few steps back, allowed herself a rare moment of relief, the corners of her lips curving in quiet pride as she observed the profound impact her daughter had made, knowing that all the hours of practice, all the whispered corrections and encouragements, had led to this precise moment of revelation. Richard Thompson, the billionaire whose initial amusement had masked genuine curiosity, now approached, his usual sharp composure softened, eyes reflecting a mixture of surprise and deep respect, and even the other elite attendees, accustomed to the finest performances and accustomed to expecting the predictable, found themselves engaged in a new narrative, one where humility and persistent effort could command attention and admiration equal to or greater than wealth and status. Conversations had begun tentatively, voices low and thoughtful, as the realization settled that Emily's presence, her quiet observation, and her extraordinary talent had created a bridge between worlds, a reminder that brilliance can come from the least expected corners, that perseverance and heart can transform doubt into recognition, and that in a room filled with power, privilege, and expectation, a single moment of authenticity and skill could disrupt assumptions and leave an indelible impression. Emily glanced briefly at the piano, the glossy surface now reflecting the subdued faces of those who had witnessed her performance, and she felt a subtle thrill of accomplishment, the knowledge that she had transformed fear and uncertainty into a display of poise and mastery. And as the guests began to shift, some exchanging nods of acknowledgement and others simply savoring the silence left in the wake of her music, it became clear that the evening had changed in ways far beyond a single performance, that the small figure of a 10-year-old girl had momentarily rewritten the rules of attention, admiration, and respect in that lavish ballroom, leaving everyone present to reflect, quietly and individually, on the profound lesson that greatness often emerges from the most unassuming, and that the softest voices, when aligned with skill and determination, can resonate with the loudest echoes in the hearts and minds of those who bear witness. As the soft echo of the piano faded completely, a quiet ripple of whispers spread through the grand ballroom, a mixture of awe and disbelief coloring every face, and Emily, still standing with her small hands loosely at her sides, felt the full weight of what she had just accomplished, the elegance of the chandeliers above reflecting in her wide, determined blue eyes, catching the attention of everyone from the youngest socialite in a glittering gown to the most seasoned entrepreneur in his finely tailored suit. She could hear the soft shuffle of polished shoes against the marble floor, the subtle clinking of glassware as guests adjusted in their seats. Yet the energy remained suspended, charged with the recognition that a child, long underestimated and quietly invisible, had claimed the room with her talent and grace, turning skepticism into silent admiration, and even those accustomed to commanding attention felt themselves caught in a shared moment of humility and respect. Her mother, standing slightly behind, placed a steadying hand on Emily's shoulder, her own heart racing with pride and a sense of vindication for every quiet lesson and every late night of practice, knowing that this single performance had translated years of perseverance into an unspoken message that resonated beyond music, touching the very essence of character and patience. Across the room, Richard Thompson, the billionaire who had initially dismissed her presence with a polite smirk, now leaned forward, his brow softened, eyes reflecting genuine wonder, the subtle adjustment of his cufflinks forgotten as he took in the precision and emotion embedded in each note Emily had played, while nearby, young journalists and photographers instinctively paused, sensing that no photo or headline could truly capture the intimate brilliance and the sheer unexpectedness of the moment, that the narrative was unfolding in real time, a narrative of quiet mastery overtaking preconceptions and assumptions. The air, heavy with the mingling scents of polished wood, fresh flowers, and the faint sweetness of dessert, seemed almost tangible, a canvas on which the memory of Emily's music would linger, creating a lasting imprint of the evening, the kind that silently reshapes the way people perceive talent, effort, and dedication. And as she turned to glance at the gathered audience, catching their wide-eyed stares and gentle nods of acknowledgement, Emily experienced a quiet, personal triumph, the satisfaction of having transformed an intimidating, glittering space into one that recognized and celebrated the unexpected, a room that had once been filled with whispers of doubt, now resonating with respect, and the soft, enduring promise of possibility. And in that moment, the young girl realized that her journey was only just beginning, that the brilliance she had revealed was a spark capable of lighting paths far beyond this ballroom, leaving everyone present not only in awe of what had just occurred, but also in quiet anticipation of the next chapter that her extraordinary talent would bring. Emily stepped away from the piano bench with a quiet grace, the sound of the final notes still lingering in the polished marble air, mingling with the soft rustle of silk gowns and the faint sparkle of crystal chandeliers, and she moved toward her mother, each step measured and deliberate, the small scuff of her shoes barely audible, yet somehow resonating in the attentive silence that had settled across the grand ballroom. Her eyes, wide and bright, reflected a mixture of pride and relief as she glanced at the faces around her, seeing astonishment soften into genuine admiration, a transformation that had begun with skepticism and ended in recognition, the rich scent of polished wood and subtle jasmine wrapping around them, as if the room itself was acknowledging the courage and skill of a child who had dared to claim her space. Richard Thompson, the billionaire who had initially dismissed her presence with a polite nod of amusement, now approached with a subtle shift in posture, his sharp gaze softened by the undeniable evidence of talent, and the other guests, once whispering among themselves with polite skepticism, now exchanged glances, nodding and murmuring quietly, their assumptions challenged by the elegance, precision, and emotional depth that Emily had poured into every note, a reminder that greatness often emerges from the most unassuming of places, and that diligence, perseverance, and quiet courage can command attention as much as privilege and power. Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest as she observed the crowd, sensing that she had not merely played a melody, but conveyed a story of resilience, dedication, and authenticity that transcended her age and station, and she took a deep, steadying breath, feeling the polished floors beneath her feet, the glint of chandelier light reflecting in her eyes, and the subtle hum of awe from the crowd vibrating through the air, a resonance that would linger long after the evening had ended, leaving a lasting impression of what could be achieved when talent, heart, and opportunity converged. Her mother reached for her hand, a silent gesture of support and pride, and as they moved toward the edge of the room, the soft murmur of guests turned into expressions of thoughtful admiration, some leaning in to whisper congratulations, others simply nodding in acknowledgement of a performance that had redefined expectations. And in that moment, Emily realized the weight and significance of her journey, the quiet determination that had brought her here, the countless hours of practice and focus, and the courage to step forward despite doubt, all culminating in a single, transformative event that had captivated a room of the elite. And as she followed her mother past the grand tables, the lingering reflection of chandeliers dancing across polished surfaces and the soft, fragrant air of flowers and fine fabrics enveloping them, she knew that this evening had not only revealed her skill but also planted the seeds of opportunity, recognition, and a future where her hidden brilliance could continue to flourish, leaving the guests to carry the memory of this remarkable moment and the quiet power of a 10-year-old girl who had changed everything simply by sharing her gift. Emily paused just outside the center of the ballroom, her small shoulders lifting slightly as she drew a deep breath, feeling the lingering vibrations of the piano reverberate through the polished marble beneath her feet, the warm glow of chandeliers casting soft patterns across the gathered guests who now regarded her with quiet reverence. Their expressions softened from curiosity to admiration as they whispered among themselves, marveling at how such a young, unassuming girl could command a room with skill and confidence. She glanced toward her mother, who stood nearby, her gentle nod conveying both pride and encouragement, a reminder of every early morning and late night spent practicing in a modest apartment far from this luxurious setting. And Emily felt the weight of those moments coalesce into a steady, grounding presence that gave her courage and clarity in the midst of a tension that would overwhelm most adults, let alone a 10-year-old child. The soft hum of conversation slowly returned, tentative and measured, as the guests processed the performance, their voices low, carrying awe and reflection, some leaning in to murmur their congratulations, others simply nodding in silent acknowledgement of the talent and dedication they had witnessed, while the subtle scent of polished wood, fresh flowers, and fine fabrics remained in the air, enhancing the sensory memory of a moment that had transcended music to become a quiet celebration of perseverance and potential. Emily allowed her eyes to sweep over the crowd, noting the expressions of realization and the subtle shifts in posture. The previously confident and self-assured individuals now humbled by the undeniable proof that true skill can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that assumptions based on age or status may obscure the recognition of genuine ability. The gentle warmth of admiration surrounded her like a soft cloak, every glance and murmur reinforcing the notion that effort, patience, and courage can create transformative moments. And she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had navigated a room of sophistication and expectation with poise, and that the message of her dedication had reached every corner of the ballroom, leaving a subtle yet powerful impact. As she stepped further from the piano, the reflections of chandelier light glinting across the marble and gilded accents of the space seemed to follow her, a visual echo of the music and determination she had conveyed, and even the most discerning guests could not help but recognize that the performance had been as much about character and heart as it was about technical skill, a silent affirmation that the smallest and quietest individuals can, at the right moment, command the largest attention and inspire the deepest respect. And in that realization, Emily understood that this evening had not only revealed her talent, but also marked the beginning of a journey that would carry far beyond the walls of the ballroom, leaving a lingering sense of wonder, hope, and the quiet anticipation of what remarkable achievements might come next from a girl who had proven that brilliance often resides in the most unexpected places. Emily took a final glance at the grand piano, the polished ebony reflecting the soft glow of the chandeliers above, and she felt a surge of quiet confidence, knowing that each note she had played had conveyed not only her technical skill but the depth of her dedication, the countless hours of practice, and the subtle guidance of her mother who had nurtured every measure with patience and love. And as she moved toward the edge of the ballroom, the polished marble floors echoing faintly beneath her small shoes, the gathered guests followed her with their eyes, their astonishment still palpable, a mixture of admiration, respect, and renewed curiosity, softening the initial judgment that had accompanied her arrival. The air, still heavy with the lingering scent of fresh flowers and the faint trace of fine perfume, seemed to carry the weight of the moment itself, binding the room in a shared recognition of talent and perseverance, while whispers of appreciation and surprise began to circulate softly, as if the elegance of the performance had cast a spell over the elite assembly, transforming their perception of what a young, quiet, and unassuming girl could achieve in such an opulent setting. And Emily felt the gentle encouragement of that collective acknowledgement, her heart steady, her breath calm, each step measured with the poise and assurance that belied her age, as though the room itself had become a canvas for the story she had just written with her music. Richard Thompson, standing near the back, adjusted his posture, the earlier hint of amusement now replaced with genuine admiration. His sharp eyes softened as he nodded subtly, acknowledging the skill, courage, and patience that had culminated in the performance, while others, from fashionably dressed socialites to seasoned philanthropists, leaned in quietly, exchanging murmurs that celebrated both the unexpected brilliance and the grace with which it had been presented, the polished chandeliers above scattering light across their reflective faces, highlighting a new awareness of humility, talent, and quiet determination in a child whose presence they had underestimated. Emily felt a moment of deep satisfaction as she allowed her gaze to sweep across the room, seeing her efforts translated into recognition that extended beyond applause, reaching into the hearts and minds of those who had been present to witness the lingering resonance of her performance, creating a bridge between worlds, between expectations and reality, between doubt and acknowledgement. And as she reached the edge of the gathering, her mother's hand brushed hers gently, a silent testament to their shared journey, the quiet victories, the perseverance, and the nurturing that had brought them to this point. And in that instant, Emily realized that the impact of her performance extended far beyond the ballroom, leaving the guests suspended in thoughtful reflection, a reminder that true talent, patience, and courage could inspire and transform, planting seeds of possibility and recognition that would continue to grow long after the last echo of the piano had faded into the luxurious, sparkling air. As Emily stepped back from the piano, the room remained suspended in a profound silence, the kind that carries the weight of astonishment and respect, the polished marble reflecting the intricate patterns of the chandeliers above as the soft glow of light danced across the faces of the guests, each of them grappling with the unexpected brilliance they had just witnessed. The hum of whispers replaced by contemplative expressions and nods of recognition, and Emily felt a quiet thrill of accomplishment, her small hands brushing lightly against the edge of the piano, feeling the residual vibrations of the music that had so completely captivated the room, the scent of polished wood, jasmine, and the faint richness of fine fabrics mingling in the air as if to wrap the moment in a tangible aura of elegance and significance. Her mother stood slightly behind, her presence calm and reassuring, eyes gleaming with pride. And Emily felt the invisible thread of their shared journey, the countless hours of practice, the patient guidance, the soft encouragements and gentle corrections, all converging into this single instance where effort and perseverance spoke louder than expectation or skepticism, and the guests, from wealthy socialites to seasoned philanthropists and the observing billionaire, leaned in slightly, their expressions softening, their initial judgments transformed into admiration, the realization dawning that talent, dedication, and courage could indeed command attention and respect, even in a room accustomed to grandeur and refinement, where wealth often dictated perception. Emily's gaze moved across the assembled crowd, taking in their subtle gestures of appreciation, a nod here, a quiet smile there, the gentle catching of eyes that communicated acknowledgement without words, and she understood that her performance had woven a narrative of persistence, humility, and hidden potential, a story that transcended the music itself and touched something deeper within each person present, a reminder that brilliance can emerge in the quietest, most unexpected places, that recognition is not given but earned through dedication and heart, and that sometimes the smallest figure in a grand setting can leave the most lasting impression. As the atmosphere shifted from shock to admiration, the young girl allowed herself a small, composed smile, feeling the warmth of acknowledgement, the gentle pulse of pride and relief, the quiet satisfaction that her journey of learning, perseverance, and courage had been validated in the most public and transformative way. And as the crowd slowly began to breathe again, their whispers carrying a mixture of wonder and respect, Emily realized that the evening had changed not only her perception of what she could achieve, but had subtly altered the perspectives of everyone present, leaving a lingering sense of inspiration, curiosity, and anticipation. The opulent ballroom now carrying the invisible imprint of a 10-year-old girl whose quiet talent had spoken louder than the grandeur, the wealth, and the initial disbelief that had greeted her at the door, proving that persistence, heart, and skill could command attention and leave an indelible mark on all who bore witness. As the evening progressed and the soft murmur of conversation returned to the grand ballroom, Emily and her mother moved toward a quieter corner, the echoes of the piano performance still resonating through the polished marble and gilded accents, a delicate reminder of the talent and courage that had captured every eye in the room, and the guests, from elegant socialites to influential business figures, continued to exchange quiet glances of admiration, their expressions softened from initial skepticism to genuine respect, a testament to the power of skill and determination when revealed with grace and confidence. Emily felt a profound sense of accomplishment, her small hands brushing against the polished edge of the piano as she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. Every early morning, every late evening of practice, and the quiet support of her mother now culminating in a moment that had shifted perceptions and expectations in a room accustomed to privilege and grandeur. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with subtle hints of fine perfume and polished wood, carrying the lingering warmth of the performance, while the soft lighting from the chandeliers created gentle reflections on the marble floor, highlighting the astonished faces of the guests as they absorbed the magnitude of what they had just witnessed, their quiet whispers speaking volumes about the impact of talent and perseverance over initial assumptions. Richard Thompson, who had observed from the back with an initial mixture of curiosity and mild amusement, now approached with a measured, thoughtful expression, nodding slightly in acknowledgement of Emily's skill, while others moved with subtle gestures of recognition, a nod here, a soft smile there, a collective understanding that this performance had been more than music, it had been a